Hey, Falcons and NFL fans, welcome to another episode of NFL Jocks and Pigskins. And is this Zozo joining us at the top of the show too?
No, this is Clo.
Clo. Okay. Have we seen Clo before?
A couple of times. She doesn't get up here too much.
How many cats do you have?
4.
Okay.
Yeah, all rescues.
That's great.
So, yeah. So, 12 years now. But
well, Clo wants to be part of the Matt Ryan conversation.
He does.
We talked about Matt Ryan a lot last week and the fallout from the Deshaun Watson, attempted trade, the trade to Cleveland. Trade did not happen to Atlanta.
Yeah.
And we will talk all about Matt Ryan pretty much again today, unless there are other topics that listeners want us to get to. There are a few other things to discuss with the Falcons. They signed a couple other players this week. Of course, they added Marcus Mariota a few hours after trading Matt Ryan. So, of course, that's part of this conversation too. But, it's always big news when you trade a 14-year veteran quarterback that you drafted at number 3 and was league MVP. It did all of those great things for the Falcons on the field and off the field.
Right.
It was really quite a sad day to see Matt Ryan go just a few days after seeing Freddie Freeman go. We mentioned that
I know.
End of the last show we had. But we did kind of see this coming after what happened with the Falcons not getting Deshaun Watson.
Oh, yeah. This is no surprise. What happened was no surprise, at least to me. Came out of the blue as far as where he was going. But, the thing is, Matt Ryan was kind of quiet and kind of handled everything very, very well as far as I could see. Very professional about it. Didn't go out and have a press conference about, why Deshaun Watson and, so, but I mean, once we saw the Deshaun Watson thing play out, then you knew Ryan was gone, and it's unfortunate. Top 10 passer in the NFL, guy who was going to be a certain Hall of Famer, and it's just it's unfortunate he couldn't finish his career in Atlanta.
Yeah, it really is, and I think he did handle it very professionally, as you said. Before we dive any further into Matt Ryan, let me get our sponsor in. Today's show brought to you by Prize Picks. Download the app, a growing fantasy app in the fantasy world. Use that promo code ASU when you download, and you'll get a 100% match on your first deposit. And it supports the show. It supports the channel, so that's great. If you like us, you like the channel, sign up for the app and put some money down, and you get that exact amount back.
Please sign up for the app. Please.
And so there, and it's not football season, so there's no football to place an entry on, but
college basketball,
right? I was going to say, I guess you could put some money on St. Peter's.
Yeah, I think we're all peacocks today, aren't we?
Yeah, at least tomorrow, right? They play tomorrow next.
Well, they play tomorrow. Yeah, boy, I don't know if Purdue took that game seriously. I really don't. Because, man, they got buried.
I didn't see any of the game. But wasn't it a close score?
Yeah, it was. Purdue never really put them away. St. Peter's stayed within 2 to 4 points the entire game. It was like Purdue couldn't extend a lead. And before you knew it, St. Peter's had taken advantage in the last couple of minutes, and they weren't missing their free throws. They hit every free throw. So, they weren't giving Purdue any opportunity to get back into the game. The pressure was on. They stayed cool under pressure. They did not let the moment overwhelm them. And, Purdue this was a team that was a Big Ten power for most of the year and just completely fell apart. As I said, I don't know if they took the game seriously, but St. Peter's sure did. St. Peter's went out there thinking, we got a chance at this. Nobody else may think we have a chance at this, but we have a chance at this.
Yeah.
And the first 15 seed to make it to the Elite Eight.
Yeah.
It's
historic. It'll be
Impressive,
it was
yeah.
an historic win, and I'm hoping to tune into the game tomorrow. I find it very ironic. They're playing a blue blood, but a blue blood who's an underdog, but won't be an underdog in this matchup. So it's very interesting that North Carolina, an 8 seed, gets a couple of upsets to get to the Elite Eight, and they're a good story. Although people aren't as excited about blue blood underdogs being good stories. People more love the St. Peter's thing. So it's
Right.
St. Peter's going up against a blue blood, but not a traditionally powerhouse blue blood. They didn't have a traditional season for their standards, I guess. North Carolina.
No, they didn't.
Yeah.
But still, I mean, there's incredible history with North Carolina in college basketball. It's
sure,
just,
of course.
You can go back as far as you need to go, and they are one of the quality programs in the country. So, one of the historic programs in the country.
So, I mean, sign up for that app, Prize Picks, and you can put some money down on St. Peter's. So,
Yeah.
But also, don't forget to subscribe to our show, to subscribe to the channel on YouTube. If you're watching on Facebook, give us a like, and follow Tom and I on Twitter at TJ Pollen, at DM Holcomb. We're talking all Matt Ryan today, mostly. We could get to some other Falcons topics. If you want us to get to a topic not pertaining to Matt Ryan with the Falcons, send us your comment. Send us your comments on Matt Ryan, too. We had a great back and forth with listeners last week, and we'd love to do that again today. So
yeah, it was fun last week. We had a lot of comments and a lot of interaction.
So did you get to check out any of Matt Ryan's press conference with the Colts?
No, I haven't been able to. No, I didn't. I haven't been able to catch up with that.
If there are any Falcons fans who haven't, I would recommend checking that out. I think you can find it on YouTube, find it on Facebook, probably on Twitter too.
Oh yeah, it's everywhere.
Yeah, but I think the most interesting he said a lot of interesting things, but I think the most interesting takeaway was that he did not. I don't think this trade even happened as like I want to leave Atlanta because they don't want me anymore. I think it's the way Matt Ryan described it. I think he inferred that he saw the Falcons were going for Deshaun Watson.
Right.
And when he saw that happening, he was like, "Oh crap! I gotta look at my options because it sounds like the team's moving on, so I'm probably gonna have to move on too." And I think there was some anger from Matt Ryan and his camp. You saw that from his family on Twitter, right. But Matt Ryan never had any anger in his press conference, never made any anger public. But I think he just simply said to himself, the Falcons are moving on. I'm going to have to move on.
It's time. Yeah.
And then 3 days.
I mean, we've been talking about this for the last month, and it was pretty much time.
Yeah, but I don't think Matt Ryan was thinking a month ago that he had to move on. I think that was the point that's the point I'm trying to make, that he didn't have an idea in his head, or he didn't think about maybe I should go to a different team until the Falcons started exploring Deshaun Watson.
Right. Well,
and
as I said, yeah, go ahead.
Once that happened, Matt Ryan realized I'd rather play for the Colts.
Yeah.
The Colts are a team that I could win with, unlike probably Atlanta. Because if you've been following Atlanta's Matt Ryan's press conferences all through the season this past fall, I mean, they had some really ugly games, of course, we all know. But Matt Ryan was still steady. He was still, we're improving, we're getting better, we're getting slowly improving. And Arthur Smith was saying the same thing. They're building a culture in Atlanta. So I think Matt Ryan bought into that. And he was not thinking about leaving at the beginning of March. But the middle of March rolls around, and Falcons want Deshaun Watson. Matt Ryan says, okay, I'm going to look at where else I could go.
Right.
He looks at the Indianapolis Colts, and he says, I want to go there. And then 3 days after, the Falcons are trying to get Watson, and Ryan decides, well, maybe I got to look elsewhere. They get back together, and the Falcons say, well, we're not taking Deshaun Watson to the prom this fall. Do you want to go with us? And Matt Ryan was like, not really.
Not really. Yeah.
I want to go to the Colts.
Right. Well, as I told you, before the Falcons had started this Deshaun Watson affair, that they had actually renegotiated the contract. I think the contract was pretty much official, They had added voidable years. They had moved that salary cap down the line a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
And once the Deshaun Watson talk started, that renegotiation never went away. He never actually signed it. And I said, going on to Spot Track, and which is my go-to site for salary cap and player and a lot of player news.
Yeah.
They had, 1 week they have the voidable years on there. They have the extension on there. The next week it's gone. So you kind of knew at that point that Ryan wasn't happy and he was ready to go. So, it was no surprise to me to see that he ended up with the Colts. Unfortunately, Baker Mayfield was just dying to go to the Colts.
Right. Well, I think Jimmy Garoppolo reportedly preferred the Colts too. So that was kind of the place to go after, I guess, other than Deshaun Watson. Deshaun Watson didn't really have the opportunity to go to the Colts because of, in the division. But yeah, all the other quarterbacks wanted to land in Indianapolis, and Matt Ryan was the Colts' top choice.
Yeah, and for good reason. I mean, the Colts are in win now mode. And they have a defense that's capable of taking them into the playoffs and taking them far. It's just a matter of, Carson Wentz just completely, just fell apart in the last 2 games last year. I mean, the Colts had that last playoff spot wrapped up.
Yeah.
There's no way. I couldn't see any scenario. They're playing 2 winnable games. They've got, it was basically winning in, and they couldn't do the job. And
it was winning in.
Yeah, it was winning in. And Carson Wentz paid the price for that. Carson Wentz gets sent away to went to the Commanders.
Yeah.
It's going to take me a while to get used to that one.
So the Colts did end up giving up a first round pick. I think it was a second round pick that became a first rounder for Carson Wentz, but only a third rounder.
Only a third rounder
for Matt Ryan. And I know that angered a lot of Falcons fans.
Well, what happened, and the Texans actually did very well with Deshaun Watson for one reason. They kind of shopped the trade, came up with a list of teams and said, okay, Watson, go ahead and meet with these teams. These are teams that we've already worked out a deal with. Now see if you can work out a deal. So, the trade was already in place by the time Watson made his choice to go to the Browns. The trade was not in place. The Falcons basically said, go ahead and see who you would like to end up with. It turned out to be the Colts. Right. And then the Falcons went to negotiate after, Ryan already let his preference be known. So,
absolutely.
That had a lot to do with it, because all of a sudden you're kind of boxed in. You have to take what the Colts are offering. I think they should have gotten another third for it. Maybe a second is too much to ask now for Matt Ryan at age 37, but definitely, it had a difference, the fact that the Falcons let Ryan shop before they worked out a deal with a certain number of teams that said, okay, Matt, here's your menu. Go and make your choice, and that's who we've worked out the deal, and we're going to make this happen.
Yeah, I think the Falcons were boxed in multiple ways. I think that's a really good description of what happened. And to be fair, the Falcons, after botching the Watson situation and kind of slapping Ryan in the face by saying we were trying to replace you on the fly, they did want to do right by him as their final goodbye to him.
Yeah.
So they did end up trading him to where he wanted to go, but that is part of a big reason why they only got the third round pick for him. The other one was the trade had to happen on Monday. Because if the trade didn't happen Monday, the Falcons were going to have to pay him that $7.5 million signing bonus and be on the hook for even more
roster bonus.
What they are. Yeah, the roster bonus, right. So they couldn't even play hardball with the Colts.
Nope.
And say, well, we're going to hold on to him for a week or two and see what happens. That wasn't even a possibility either. The trade had to happen with the Colts, and it had to occur on Monday, which really boxed the Falcons in.
Yeah, it did. They gave themselves no leverage. So, what they got the third rounder, and that's just about it. They could have played it better. You could have played it better and still given Matt Ryan, still treated Matt Ryan right as far as not trading him to another building team, another team that is going nowhere. You could have still treated him right, but you could have played it a little bit better. And I think the Falcons just kind of let it play out, and they were a bit passive as far as the way the process went, and that's why they only got the third rounder for him.
They could have explored a Matt Ryan trade before trying to go for Deshaun Watson. I know that would have left them with no quarterback for the time being.
Right.
But I mean, that's what the Colts did, and they ended up with Matt Ryan. And that's what ended up happening anyway for the Falcons. They weren't able to go back to Matt Ryan as a backup plan. So why not try and explore a Matt Ryan? We all said that, and Todd said, one of our listeners here says it was time for Matt to go, both parties involved. We weren't completely against that idea.
Right.
3 or 4 weeks ago, we were talking about the benefits of a Matt Ryan trade.
Right.
What we did not like was the way it went down, the way they tried to go after Deshaun Watson, lowered Matt Ryan's trade value, got rid of all of any levers they could have had was gone. They should have tried to see if Indianapolis or anybody else was interested in Matt Ryan the week before trying to go for Deshaun Watson. Yeah,
it seems like they really had no plan for it. And this is kind of another thing that we've been going on about over the last few weeks.
Right? It's a theme.
The team. The team had no plan. It seemed like all of a sudden they jumped into the Deshaun Watson pool and, clothes on and everything. They just decided, we're going to jump in.
The cell phone in their pocket.
Yep.
iPad in their hands. Oh, I'm just going to jump in.
I think maybe the week before things started getting hot with Deshaun Watson, they had no clue. They had no interest in having Deshaun Watson come to Atlanta.
Yeah.
And then it's funny how all of a sudden all that interest generated, and it nearly happened. But yeah, once you started making the Deshaun Watson play, you've got to make Matt Ryan. You got to start looking around for Matt Ryan because he's not going to come back. You know that you've really cut ties with him at that point. Right. And that's when they should have actually started looking around. Because either way, you were going to end up with no quarterback. If you didn't get Deshaun Watson, okay, Matt Ryan isn't coming back. You still have no quarterback.
Right.
So, you knew that was going to happen either way, whether you signed him or not.
Absolutely. Yeah. It would have been better for the team in terms of trying to get compensation for Ryan. It would have been better for PR because it would have been, okay, we're saying goodbye to Matt Ryan. We're building for the future. It's better for the team. And then, I know there were lots of reasons not to be excited about trying to trade for Deshaun Watson, obvious reasons. But from a football perspective, your fan base can get excited for trying to trade for Deshaun Watson when you have no quarterback. But when you still have Matt Ryan, there's a part of them that's like, I don't want to say goodbye to Matt Ryan.
Right.
But if they'd already said goodbye to him, then they would have been much easier for them to buy in on Deshaun Watson.
I think so. Yeah, sure. You're asking them to accept this other guy and as I say, emotions get too involved in some of these things sometimes with fans. You got to look at it logically and say, and as we've been doing is saying, yeah, it was time for Ryan to move on. But my whole take on it was just, let's give Ryan another bite at the apple. Let's give him another shot with a good team. And fans with Ryan around are going to say, well, yeah, but he's been our quarterback for 14 years and he's been our our guy, and he took us to the Super Bowl, and he's a top 10 passer all time. And fans, he's the greatest Falcon. Fans are going to be reluctant. If he's gone, you've cut ties. You cut ties properly.
Right.
Then you got a different scenario.
Yeah, I think it would have been completely different. And look, I think the Colts played this really well. They were patient. Yes. They didn't really play their hand in terms of who they wanted at quarterback. And then Matt Ryan became available and they swooped in. So,
right.
Maybe a trade of the Colts a week before free agency is easier said than done.
I think the Colts were waiting to see how everything was going to play out with Deshaun Watson before they started making their move.
Yeah. I think they were very smart. Chris Ballard is a very patient general manager.
He's a great general manager.
I'm writing about them at heavy.com. So fans are frustrated with him because he doesn't jump on, the top free agents in the first couple of days of free agency. But, the reason why they're leaders in the clubhouse in terms of salary cap space seemingly every year is because he doesn't do that. And
right.
He gets the bargain deals and he still has built a pretty good team. Yeah, you can complain it's another short-term solution at quarterback and it's kind of been a turnstile at that position, which you don't want. But I think Matt Ryan, Todd said a little bit earlier, Matt Ryan doesn't have much left in the tank. I think he's going to have a good season with Indianapolis.
So do I. I think he still has something in the tank.
And
the problem last year was there was a lot of turmoil on offense.
Right.
It made it rough for Ryan to really perform the way we're used to seeing Matt Ryan perform.
And I wouldn't say the Colts have a great set of weapons for Ryan to throw to. And Michael Pittman became a 1,000-yard receiver last year and just barely. Maybe if we were still in a 16-game season, he's not a 1,000-yard receiver. We have to stop saying that at some point. But I think, that's a fair point that he's not an elite receiver, and he's really all they got in the passing game.
At the moment, yeah, because Zach Pascal's not going back. He's going to the Eagles.
Even last year, Pascal had half as many targets, half as many catches as Pittman did.
Right.
So, I think that the Colts, I would assume they're going to draft a wide receiver, sign a wide receiver here in the next few weeks.
So do I.
But the big difference is that defense, and Matt Ryan's going to do a lot of handing off to Jonathan
Taylor.
And that's going to make him look a lot better when he does drop back to pass, because the defense has got to stop that Jonathan Taylor. It's probably maybe the best running back Ryan's ever played with, but certainly the best since at least Devontae Freeman, if not like going all the way back to Steven Jackson or Michael Turner, somebody like that.
Right. Exactly. It is. Jonathan Taylor is just he became elite. We saw that he was getting to that point in 2021. He became 2020. He became elite last year. He is just an extra level type back, and he can catch. He's a guy who can go out in patterns, and Ryan can hit him. So this is a guy who can do a lot of that. Yeah, I expect the Colts to actually draft a wide receiver at some point. And everybody's been saying this is a deep wide receiver draft. So you can get receivers. Never think you can't get receiver in a draft, even if you're picking second or third day. They're out there. So
absolutely. Yeah, and the Colts don't have a first round pick. That could be why. So there's been speculation that they should have been in on Tyreek Hill, or maybe they could be in on DK Metcalf, Tyler Lockett. Stephon Diggs has been thrown around because he was tweeting this week that it's not ever personal, it's business always. So there's, I guess, people think that he's not happy with his contract in Buffalo, and maybe Indianapolis can trade for him. The Colts don't have a first round pick, so that none of that is happening.
No,
they can sign somebody. Like Tajay Sharp actually is somebody I think maybe they could add that's familiar with Matt Ryan. Julio Jones to the Colts is kind of a rumor now because of Matt Ryan.
Yeah. Larry Orange just brought that up. Yeah.
How about Tajay Sharp?
Yeah, I think Tajay Sharp would be a good ad for the Colts. Again, Ryan knows him. So, it would be a good thing. Julio might, I don't know. I don't know if he can stay healthy long enough to be any use to the Colts. Now, a former all-pro wide receiver, even if he's at 2/3 of his peak abilities, is still a pretty damn good receiver. So
You talking about Julio?
Julio.
Yeah.
So maybe, you're not going to get the Julio Jones of those glory days between, Matt Ryan and Julio Jones, but you're still going to get a decent receiver in Julio Jones if he's healthy. So, maybe if you can get him at the right price, because you're right, Ballard does not overpay for talent.
Yeah.
And it's one of the things that I've been encouraged about here in Chicago with Ryan Poles, the new general manager. He didn't go out and start signing like Ryan Pace he had done the previous few years, kind of selling the farm to see if they could win, put something together for the following year. And then you end up in salary cap hell. The following year, you got to restructure contracts. You got to keep restructuring contracts down the road.
Right.
You end up with players that are older, getting injured more, and not worth the contract that you originally gave them. Yeah. And I'm more for the patient approach. Don't go crazy with these free agents. So I'm fine with the way Ballard does things and the way Poles is kind of taking that tack. And it'll be interesting to see if he can get Jones at the right price. It depends on what Jones is asking. What does Jones think about himself? Does Jones still think he's an elite receiver? Or does he realize that maybe, the best is kind of in my rearview mirror, but I can still contribute? We'll see what Julio Jones has to say from there.
Larry Orange agrees with us that he likes Matt Ryan's chances in Indianapolis for the reasons that we said. And then Tom referenced this. He asked about Julio Jones. I agree with you. If healthy, sure. But he hasn't been healthy for 3 years.
No, he hasn't. Right.
So to me, I don't think the Colts are going to look into Julio Jones. And Cindy wants to focus on the Falcons. No talk about the Colts. Cindy, we do like talking about the other teams in the league on this show. We even dive into a little bit of fantasy football from time to time as well. So bear with us when we talk about the other teams, but we'll get back on track for you now.
We'll talk about the Falcons. Yes.
So to replace Matt Ryan, the Falcons brought in Marcus Mariota.
And by the way, Cindy did make a previous comment. Our 8th pick needs to go to defense, period. Definitely, Cindy. I've been saying that since the end of the year. It's got to be defense. So, yeah. And that goes into what Dave was just starting to say is Marcus Mariota coming in. You're bringing in a quarterback who is the second, second overall pick in 2015. Just think, you're going to have the second overall pick in 2015, playing the first overall pick in 2015 twice this following season, right. Twice in 2022.
Yeah. They played each other in the first game in both of their first games in NFL history. I think it was the first time that ever happened. The number 1 pick played the number 2 pick in their first ever NFL game.
Yeah. So it's going to be fun to, not that either pick has actually done much for
right. Yeah.
in the NFL, but still,
we have some other comments from our listeners here on Marcus Mariota we could get to from a few minutes ago. William says Marcus Mariota is not the answer, I think is what he meant. I mean, absolutely. He is not the long-term solution. No. William also said we have nobody shaking his head. Yeah, I mean, other than Kyle Pitts, and, we could dive back into that discussion all about should the Falcons have drafted Justin Fields. I don't think Falcons fans want to revisit that.
No.
But
there's no reason to. I mean, that's in the past now.
Yeah.
There's just nothing you can do about it.
But I guess the point I would make is, it goes back to what we were saying about there's no plan. And hopefully there's a plan going forward now that, they are going to start rebuilding, that this is no longer a well, we're trying to build for the future, but we're trying to win now. I mean, there's no mistaking that without Matt Ryan and Marcus Mariota as your quarterback and $40 million cap hit to players not on your roster, whatever it is, it might be more than $40 million. I think it's like 27% of the salary.
It's a total of $60 million is in the dead cap.
Okay.
Between Julio Jones and Matt Ryan. Matt Ryan's $40 million.
Well, there's more if you're looking at the whole dead cap. I mean, there's Dante Fowler's in that too.
Yeah, I'm looking up the dead cap right now.
I think
Dante Fowler is in there for $4 million. Tyler Davison is in there for $1 million too. Julio Jones is in there for $15 million. So you got your dead cap, $55 million in dead cap going to 2 players.
So I think it's 27%, 28%.
Yeah, something like that. It's
of the salary cap is going to Julio Jones and Matt Ryan to play for different
teams. 27%. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, it's a rebuild. And hopefully that's, that they don't try to mince words about that anymore. That rebuild
is not a dirty
word.
They are. Fontenot and Smith continue to refuse to say the R word.
They haven't said it this week?
No, they haven't. They do not want to say the R word.
Have they appeared publicly since trading Matt Ryan?
I don't. As I say, it's been a heavy week at work, so I haven't been as close to it as I normally like to be. I usually like to be right on top of this because this is a fun time of year. Sure. And seeing what teams expect as they go into the draft. But I do remember seeing something this past week where it mentioned that Terry Fontenot and Arthur Smith just aren't considering this a rebuild yet. And I don't know how you could consider it anything but. It's a rebuild. Because now that you sign Marcus Mariota, you've used all your cap space again. All right. You're back at ground zero as far as the cap. You have no room. They still have to create cap room, let alone finish off free agency and go into the draft.
Yeah.
There's a lot of work to do yet for the Falcons. Oh yeah, they signed Younghoe Koo, and but I think everybody was fine with that. I mean, Koo is the best kicker in the National Football League, and you got to have somebody who's going to put points on the board.
Well, and they did re-sign Cordell Patterson. I think that was during our show last week.
Yeah. Yes, it was during the show last week, right?
So they've got Patterson back. They've got Kyle Pitts, but with Marcus Mariota, I mean, I guess there are probably some people that still remember Mariota as the Heisman Trophy guy and the number 2 pick, but I can't say that I was never high on Mariota. I think when he was the number 2 pick, I probably, thought he would do well. Chip Kelly was a huge advocate for Marcus Mariota. And, I know Chip Kelly is kind of a polarizing figure in the NFL at least, but he knows offense. So, and he knew Marcus Mariota better than anybody coming out of Oregon. So I figured Chip Kelly, when he said, I think Marcus Mariota can be successful at anything that he does, I think that was I'm paraphrasing, but I think that was the quote that he said when Mariota got drafted in 2015. And so I believed him. I thought Mariota would have success, but, he has struggled like we've seen some other run first type college quarterbacks struggle in the NFL, and he hasn't been able to transition. I don't think he's going to transition even now. I think he's better suited as a backup role at this point. The Raiders used him a little bit as a gadget. He'd come in for a couple plays. He had the run pass option kind of thing. But when he's your number 1 quarterback, he's not as efficient or as a passer as you need at the NFL level. So no. Absolutely, it's a rebuild. He's not the solution. He's absolutely not the solution. This isn't even a reclamation project. This is Mariota as a placeholder until the Falcons figure out what to do next at quarterback. Mariota's coming in to make it look basically. To me, Mariota is here so it doesn't look like the Falcons are tanking. Because if they start Josh Rosen, then you can start to think, well, are you losing on purpose?
Right.
With Mariota, at least it looks like you're trying to win. That
Right.
to me is what it is, why they signed Mariota.
Yes, exactly. That's it. In a nutshell, you had to bring in some kind of professional looking quarterback, or else. Well, the fan base is very discouraged with this team.
They were discouraged last year.
I know, but they have problems. They get discouraged. The Falcons are having problems putting people in this new stadium.
Yeah.
So, and the only way they're going to put people in this new stadium is to bring in at least somebody that you can point to and say, hey, at least this guy can play quarterback. Now, this is a guy that Arthur Smith benched when he was in Tennessee to play quarterback.
Yeah.
But other than that, at least you have somebody who was the second overall pick. You got somebody who, by all outward appearances, is a starting quarterback. And he's been living off that one game that he had in Las Vegas, where he was 17 for 28 for 226 yards. He had a big game, ended up getting injured that game. And he's been kind of living off that game ever since, saying, look, here's what I can do. Look at what I did the last time I really started. I had this great game. But it just – so, and that's what everybody's going to be pointing to in OTAs and in training camps, saying, yeah, it's, Marcus Mariota still has that potential. I love the word potential.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. It's a word that you can throw around a lot this time of year with players and draft picks.
Yes.
But I mean, it is a good word, at least for draft picks. It's a difference between using the word potential when you're looking at a second round pick and, he has the potential to become a first rounder, as opposed to Marcus Mariota, who's been in the league for 6 or 7 years. And you're like, well, he has the potential. No, I haven't seen it for 6-7 years.
Right.
What you've seen is what you get.
What you see is what you get.
Yeah.
That's it. Larry Orange, good question. You think they should go after Mayfield? Problem is, Larry, is they don't have the draft capital to go after Mayfield. They don't have the salary cap to go after Mayfield. Mayfield is getting $18 million next year. That's it. There's no getting around it unless you can restructure that deal. And the Falcons have no room. They have no cap room. They can't do that kind of deal. So not without making some other contract moves.
If the Falcons are...
I don't think they're ready to go after Baker Mayfield right now. I think the plan right now is to survive 2022 with Marcus Mariota. Yeah. I'm going to be interesting to see how they handle the draft, because Cindy mentioned defense on the draft, and I've been talking defense on the draft. You've got to get an edge rusher in here.
Yeah.
Dante Fowler did not work. But are the Falcons maybe thinking quarterback with that number 8 pick?
Quarterback?
Yeah.
They might be, but I mean, I don't know what they're thinking. I can't answer that, honestly. I'm trying to find, Williams says they should draft Malik Willis or get a safety. I don't think that's what they should do.
They need a defensive line. They need an edge rusher.
And if you're not right, I've been saying that for years, and this is a deep edge rushing class. I know they did just get, Cindy pointed out, they did sign an edge rusher. I believe that was Lorenzo Carter.
Yeah.
Yes, Lorenzo Carter. was double checking that. I mean, he's not going to move the needle a ton as an edge rusher. They need to get a bona fide, top 10 edge rusher. And there are, I mean, in Daniel Jeremiah's mock draft that came out this week, the top 3 players were edge rushers.
Yes.
That were off the board in his draft. Now the draft might not break down. Oh, hi Zozo. One of those edge rushers might drop to number 8, and the Falcons can get him, or the number 4 edge rusher in this class. I know last year, at least I didn't want the Falcons to take the number 4 quarterback, but the number 4 edge rusher this year would have been the number 1 edge rusher last year if all things were equal. So, I mean, they could get Jermaine Johnson too from Florida State at number 8, and he would be, a pretty great, and he's great against the run. He's even better against the run than he is rushing the passer, but he's pretty good against rushing the pass too. So even him at number 8, I think would be a great pick, and I think would be a better pick than taking a risk on Malik Willis.
So do I.
I think the other point that Scott Kennedy, a guy that I've worked with, he writes at allfalcons.com. It's a new website. I had a column this past week on allfalcons.com. Got listeners should check it out.
Well, you're just busy all over the place, aren't you, Dave?
I'm moving and shaking. Gotta do everything. But Scott made a great point on his initial reaction video to Matt Ryan getting traded. Why draft a quarterback this year and get him killed behind that offensive line?
Yeah, there's that. Well, Malik Willis can he's mobile. So, I mean, there's one thing, there's one advantage to Malik Willis.
Right.
But
it's true.
I think he's too big of a question mark. I think every quarterback in this draft is too big of a question mark.
Yeah. I think so too. So I think you shore up the rest of your team. You get an edge rusher. You try to fix this offensive line. Maybe Jalen Mayfield played a little bit better at the end of the season. You got to figure out if he's actually a solution at one of the guard spots. What are you going to do with his name is slipping my mind. The tackle, the right tackle,
Caleb McGarry.
Caleb McGarry. What are you going to do with him? I think you answer all these questions before you go for quarterback. And don't pick a wide receiver at number 8 either. I've seen that a lot in mock drafts. I know it's a need. I get it. There's no weapons on this team. But
you can get receiver later.
Yes.
And I'm going to keep plugging that until the draft, after the draft. You can get receivers later in the draft this year. They are there. This draft is glutted with receivers.
Yeah.
So don't worry about that.
You can get that on day 2 and day 3.
The bad thing for the Falcons this year is that a lot of the teams who are drafting ahead of them actually already have their quarterback situation figured out.
That's why the edge rushers could go.
Yeah, that's why the edge rushers are going to go. That's why a lot of players who normally would have been around for the Falcons at 8 aren't going to be there. Yeah. Because a lot of these teams made their quarterback commitments either last year or signed a quarterback that they are committed to. And that's it. That's as far as they're going with it right now. They're going to live or die with that guy and see what they have. Yeah. So that's why a lot of other top elite players from other positions aren't going to be available like they normally would have for the Falcons in past years, which is unfortunate, but it's the way things go. You've got to do your scouting and you got to find the right guy. It all comes down to Terry Fontenot now. Well,
there's 4 elite edge rushers, or maybe 3 elite edge rushers, and then Johnson, I would say, is a very, very good edge rusher at this point. And then there's 2 elite offensive linemen. So you're looking, I think I would be happy if the Falcons got any of those 6 players. And,
so would I.
And they're picking 8th. So they really just need one of those guys to drop 2 spots.
Right. I don't think they're getting Evan Neal. I still think Evan Neal is going to go. I think Evan Neal might go to the Jacksonville Jaguars.
At number 1.
At number 1, yeah. So
not Aiden Hutchinson?
Aiden Hutchinson's a possibility too.
I've seen
if
him.
Aiden Hutchinson doesn't go to the Jaguars, he's going to go to the Lions. So that, Hutchinson is going in the first 2 picks.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, the Falcons are not getting him. I don't think they're getting O'Neal either. But the other 4 guys that we could mention in these 6 players that I'm, kind of identified, I think one of those guys has a good chance of being available at 8, maybe multiple, maybe.
Yeah, Jermaine Johnson should be there, definitely. And there will be other players who are worth going after at 8. They should get an impact player at 8. That impact player this year is not going to be a quarterback, which, is unfortunate. It's not like this is not last year's draft where you had your choice of guys who everybody had on their board as a starter. That's not the case this year. Everybody's a question mark.
Yeah.
Malik Willis. Malik Willis was throwing some fantastic deep balls. He had a great pro day. He had a good combine. I really enjoyed watching Malik Willis work out, but you don't know what he's going to do. My problem is the competition he faced in college. He's taken a huge step up from Liberty.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
So
to me, I think Willis, if we're talking about quarterbacks, and this is my, amateurish, non-scouting opinion. I am not a scout by any means. But I would say, from what I've read, that it's either Willis or Pickett.
Right.
And I don't really want Matt Corral. I wouldn't want Desmond Ridder. I wouldn't want Sam Howell. And somehow Pro Football Focus has Sam Howell as their number one quarterback. I don't understand that. I know that they're the analytics of football, and I guess they're much smarter than me. I don't know. But
sometimes no, Dave, they're not much smarter than you. Sometimes I wonder if Pro Football Focus is watching the same games that the rest of us do. And I understand how I do have an understanding of how Pro Football Focus works as far as how they analyze players. So I know what they look at. It should work. It should be a lot better than it is, but it isn't. I don't think they're as good as everybody gives them credit for being. So I'm not.
Well, what I would say about Pro Football Focus, we see this in baseball more than football. We want one stat, we want one system to be the end all be all, and I think Pro Football Focus has this aura about it that, like, well, if I look at Pro Football Focus's grades, then nothing else matters.
Right.
And that's not true. It's not true with anything. You can't just look at OPS. You can't just look at slugging percentage. You can't just look at batting average. You can't just look at walks.
How about
all of it together encompasses,
Dave?
a hitter's worth.
Would you look at WAR?
No, I don't know. I still don't know what it means, and I'm not looking at it. No one's going to make me. Tom knew the answer.
I'm teasing you because I knew what the answer I was going to get. Right.
Exactly. So anyway, back to my point about quarterbacks. To me, it's Willis. If you want a high end, risky but high upside prospect that can run, that can do both throw and run, then you're looking at Willis. Yeah. I think if you want maybe a guy that's got a better chance of being more steady, but I don't think he has as high of a ceiling. He probably is going to be at best a Kirk Cousins like. You're looking at Kenny Pickett.
Probably, yeah.
The other three, I'm not really interested in, and I'm not interested in either of those guys I just said at number 8. Now, I guess Cindy asks a very interesting question. What do you think about moving back? And then she continued and stock up on some solid players. Cindy, I would not move back if one of those 6 guys, the 4 edge rushers and the 2 offensive linemen, if one of those 6 guys are available at 8, I would take them.
Yes,
because those are impactful top 10,
right?
As close to a slam dunk as you're going to get in an NFL draft. There are no slam dunks, but
those are players you can build around.
Yeah,
and the
if
problem
one of those
is,
guys
go ahead.
If one of those guys isn't available, and I don't know, Washington is I don't think this will happen because Washington has Carson Wentz, but if the Steelers, if the Saints decide Trubisky and Winston are just placeholders and we want our future and we're going to trade up for a quarterback, then and those 6 guys aren't there at 8, then I think the Falcons would be wise to move back, stock up on picks, address more needs, work on the depth, and you can still get, if you're trading it to a team that is going for a quarterback, and Steelers and Saints pick further back. So it would be a far, it would be a far drop back, 10 picks or so.
Yeah.
But you'd still get a pretty good player in the top 20 in this draft, and you would have more picks. So I think I would explore it if one of those 6 guys aren't there.
And one of the things you have to look at also, Cindy, is who wants to move up? If none of those players are there, who actually wants to move up into that spot? And
It would be for a quarterback, right? I mean,
Right.
teams.
It would be for a quarterback. It would have to be for a quarterback.
Yeah.
I don't think there's a lot of teams that are really going to be looking for a quarterback right now. I did a listing of every team and their starter and projected starter, and I just don't see a big market for Pickett or Willis to begin with, especially since you still have Baker Mayfield and Jimmy Garoppolo sitting out there wanting to be. Now, the 49ers may want to move up and take the guy. Oh, no, they're not going to move up. They got Trey Lance. What am I saying? But the 49ers are going to sign a bridge quarterback to get them to Trey Lance. But, I would rather have that impact guy. You're in rebuild mode. So you got to get that impact guy now. And when you got a chance, when you're in the top 10 in the draft, get as many impact guys as you can.
Yeah, absolutely. And get as many picks as you can too, though. If
I agree. Yeah, you have to, but I don't think picks are going to be there to be had.
Okay. Yeah, I think that's fair. Yeah, for as quarterback, as needy as the quarterback position is, a lot of teams have satisfied, at least to somewhat satisfied. I mean, we're slotting Trubisky to the Steelers and Winston to the Saints and those things. And those guys probably aren't long-term solutions either. But at least for this season, they've satisfied that quarterback spot.
And again, for the fact that this isn't a strong quarterback draft, I think they're looking at the guy that they signed or the guys that they have and are saying, okay, this is a guy we can move forward with. Let's get a solid backup and go from there.
Yeah.
I mean, the Texans are going to, they traded Deshaun Watson. They're going to move forward with Davis Mills. And they aren't going to move forward with Davis Mills because they just don't feel like there's a quarterback. They feel like Mills played well enough last year at the end of last year to give him a shot starting, as a starter for the full season. And why commit to another quarterback when you might have that guy in-house? You don't know it yet.
Yeah, I think the Saints and Steelers, I think they signed those guys because they can move forward with them this season, like you said. But if there is a situation, and this seems unlikely, but it's possible with this draft class at quarterback, if Kenny Pickett or Malik Willis fall to them in the teens or at 20, then I think they'll take them. I think they will draft a quarterback if the guy that they like is there. But because they have Winston and Trubisky on the roster, they don't have to trade up to number 8.
No, they don't.
Yeah.
They just don't. And there's a lot of people who think that Trubisky was a victim of Matt Nagy's offense and Matt Nagy's instruction. Some think he got no instruction from Matt Nagy. But, yeah, I'm one of those. Don't talk to me about Matt Nagy. But, maybe Mitch Trubisky is the guy. You never know. So go with it this year. You're going to have a better quarterback class next year. Yeah. And take dip into the market next year for a quarterback because you don't have one right now. Yeah, Cindy.
Yeah, she agrees with you.
She agrees with me. Smart football mind, Cindy. Love it.
I want to return to the Baker Mayfield question for the last few minutes, if that's okay.
Sure.
Larry Orange asked if they should go after Mayfield. And I think your points were correct. They can't afford him. They don't have necessarily the draft stock to trade for him, nor should they think about that because they need all the picks they can get.
They got to build that depth. They got to build a team again.
And Ian Rappaport had an interesting report yesterday, I think it was, that the Browns might just keep Mayfield until they figure out Deshaun Watson's suspension situation. And there is a scenario, at least Rappaport thinks, where Mayfield starts for the Browns if Watson is suspended to begin the season. I think that would be crazy. I'm not sure that's...
Do you want a quarterback, though, Dave, who really does not want to be with you?
I don't
want to be around.
I don't think that's a good idea. Absolutely not. This is Ian Rappaport's report, not mine. But there is not a market for Mayfield like there was for Matt Ryan. Mayfield isn't even going to get a 3rd round pick. I don't even know if he even gets a 5th round pick
right now. No, because I think Cleveland's desperate to try and move him.
They might end up just releasing him if he really plays hardball. And teams, I think teams know that releasing him is a possibility. And when that becomes the situation, why trade for a guy?
Right.
So why Falcons don't need to trade for me if they're interested in Mayfield. I don't even know if they are. I don't even know if they should be. I'd have to go back and look at Mayfield, probably his tape from 2020, to really think about whether or not the Falcons should be interested in Mayfield. But if they are, they should be patient like Chris Ballard was. You don't need to trade for him. You don't need to open up salary cap space to bring in this guy. See if he hits the open market. You got Marcus Mariota. He's your placeholder. And see if Mayfield will get released this summer. And you could see, and even if he's not released this summer and the Browns, kind of stupidly keep him on their roster, try to play him, he could be available next March. Yeah. He's only got 1 year left on his contract.
Right.
And if Mariota doesn't play well, you could look into Mayfield next season, depending on where you draft and depending on the rookie draft class next year.
If you wait long enough, Mayfield might be available for a couple of million for a minimum of contract.
Right.
And the Browns pick up the dead cap.
Yeah.
But see, the Browns can afford the dead cap. That's why Baker Mayfield is a possibility that he could get released. The Browns can afford the dead cap right now. Especially with the way Watson's contract is structured, as only $1 million for this season. The Browns are actually in good salary cap space depending on what they want to do. So if they release Mayfield and eat $18 million for one season, I don't think they're worried about that. They have a lot of their team in place, and they have the ability to build more and put more pieces in place as we move forward at the tail end of free agency and in the draft. So, the Browns may release Mayfield. You never know. It's worth being patient just to see.
Right. And that's my point, that if they're interested in Mayfield, I don't know if they are or not, but if they are, then I think they should be patient and see what happens.
Yeah. The Browns are 8th in salary cap space right now. So they really do have a lot of flexibility as far as what they might want to do. And that, I seem to think that Mayfield's a better quarterback than a lot of other people do. I don't know why that is. As I say, you try going into work every day with a brace on the left side of your body that's trying to hold your arm in place and do your job every day, and see how hard that is, and then do that as an NFL quarterback. Mayfield lost some zip on his throws after he started wearing the brace.
Yeah.
That was one of the problems for that led to a lot of interceptions that he wouldn't have normally thrown. Because cornerbacks, defensive backs were able to move on the ball with more confidence than they normally would have with Baker Mayfield.
I think the dislike for Mayfield among at least the Browns organization, I can't speak for the fans. Fans have unrealistic expectations, but I think the Browns wanted to move on from Mayfield for more than just his performance on the field. I was listening to Joe Thomas's interview with Dan Patrick this week, and Thomas said, Mayfield did not play bad enough to lose his job. It's just that he played with such an edge and an arrogance and fighting with the media all the time. And, you and I don't follow the Browns on a daily basis, so maybe we just don't see those things. Right. And, I think it would be beneficial to Baker Mayfield if he got traded for a 7th round, 6th round pick, really got humbled, or just flat out released and has to sign a contract for, $6, $7, $8 million, $10 million. I know that's a lot of money for you and I, but in NFL circles, that is a humbling thing that Mayfield would have to do. And then maybe he plays more like the walk-on that he played like at Oklahoma. He played with a chip on his shoulder. I know he has a chip on his shoulder here in the NFL, but it just seems like it rubs people the wrong way because he plays with a chip on his shoulder and he was the number 1 pick. maybe if he is down and out and then plays with that chip, he'll get more respect from the media and from his own teammates even.
Yeah. Larry, it was his non-throwing shoulder. So it was his left shoulder, not his right shoulder.
He did. And that was right after the season he had surgery. Yeah. So he'll be ready for this season.
Yeah.
Jimmy Garoppolo should be ready for the season too. But I know the Colts one of the reasons why reportedly they stayed away from Garoppolo and wanted Matt Ryan instead was Garoppolo's not going to be throwing again until early July.
Yeah. Yeah. It's going to be close to training camp when he's ready to throw.
Yeah. But Mayfield had that surgery, I think almost 2 months before Garoppolo ended up having. I don't know why Garoppolo waited so long to have his surgery. He had.
I don't get it. I don't know why guys wait to have surgeries if they need them. Get it done so you're ready for next season.
Yeah. That strikes me as very odd. I think if I remember correctly, his surgery was March 8th or March 9th.
Something like that.
And he had a late. They were playing in the championship weekend, but that was still 6 weeks prior to his surgery.
Right.
5 weeks at least. So, and Mayfield didn't play in the final game for the Browns. I think he had surgery before the final game.
Yes, he did.
Week 18.
Yeah, he did. He did not play the final game. Case Keenum played, and Mayfield finally, he decided that was enough. We weren't making the playoffs. It's time to get this done. I like a quarterback with a chip on the shoulder, by the way. Yeah, you can be too arrogant. I agree. You got to dole that out in bits. But I do like a quarterback with a chip on his shoulder. I like a quarterback who thinks he's the best in the league. I want a guy who thinks that he can do these things and win with your team and make your players better. Make your players feel that too. Make them feel like they're making you better. Okay, that's kind of like the difference.
So for somebody like Mayfield, is the problem then that you're not the best and you think you're the best and you come across as arrogant, or is the problem that he's so emotional and it's so obvious he thinks he's the best? We know Tom Brady thinks he's the best. We know Aaron Rodgers thinks he's the best. We know Patrick Mahomes thinks he's the best. But you just don't see it though. I don't know. You just don't see it on their face, that arrogance that you see with Mayfield. Right. You see it with Kyler Murray, and I think you see it with Joe Burrow too. Now, granted, Joe Burrow has won, and maybe I'm sure it doesn't bother people as much with Joe Burrow, but I think it bothers people with Baker Mayfield and to a certain extent Kyler Murray too, after the way he played in that playoff game.
Yes. Yeah, and you're right. That's a difference. They are calm and cool on the field, and they let things happen. They let the game come to them. So, and that's a difference. Maybe Baker Mayfield's trying to do too much. As I said, I got to watch. Maybe I'll watch some more Browns games from last year to see what I see. It would be an interesting piece of research to see why this. And I've heard the same things too, Dave, that he needs to be humbled, that he needs to be brought down a notch. So, we'll see. I mean, there's nothing more humbling than getting replaced and kind of getting thrown on the trash pile of failed quarterbacks. So we'll see how that comes out.
We're going to end today with 2 comments from Cindy, and one of them is very positive for the Falcons. So we'll end with some good feelings for the Falcons. Cindy asks if the Pittsburgh Steelers are interested in getting Mayfield. Kurt Warner started that rumor, and I didn't put much stock into it. I really thought I'm not a huge fan of Kurt Warner's analysis. I think he's good at play-by-play in game, but in terms of talking about free agency, the former players aren't good at free agency just in general, because you want to talk Ian Rappaport, Mike Florio, the guys who have the scoops. They're good at free agency, not the former players. But Mike Florio had an article about the Steelers being connected with Baker Mayfield yesterday. So I guess we'll have to wait and see. That trade between the Steelers and Browns will never happen. But if he's released,
no.
And then it's fair game. Maybe with Trubisky, I don't know how that would work, adding Mayfield as well.
If Mayfield is released, I could see the Steelers being a part of in one of the interested parties, but not as a trade.
Right. Of course not. Not as a trade. Definitely not as a trade. And Cindy's last comment just before the Mayfield thing, talking about the salary cap space for next year. And that's getting back to why we're saying this is a rebuild. And rebuild is not a dirty word. Just take your medicine this year, stock up in all the positions that you can in the draft other than quarterback. Don't really need a wide receiver yet. Address other needs along offensive, defensive line, linebackers. They could use some help at safety. Fill out these holes. And then next year, when you have more salary cap space and you have a situation where a quarterback will be able to step in and have some success because he's got a better offensive line, he's got a better defense, then you go for the quarterback, spending big in free agency or probably drafting a guy. And then you can add some wide receivers in free agency to help that.
They're going to have the money to sign a couple of impact players next year for 2023.
Sure.
And that's what this is all about too, Cindy, is that they've cleared up this cap space. This cap space that has handicapped them for the last 2-3 years. The space, the problem that Thomas Dimitroff built for them.
Right.
They're finally going to dig their way out.
Why he was fired.
Right.
He lost his job for a reason. And it was one of the reasons was the biggest reason was the salary cap. He just kept pushing off the payment of some of these contracts into the future, and it's just handcuffed the team seemingly for years now. And just finally the Falcons said, well, we're going to take our medicine this year and we're just going to suck it up and we're going to stink. And that stinks because for this fall, it's not going to be fun watching the Falcons. I really believe that they're not going to be a fun team this season, but there will be brighter days ahead.
I think you're going to have some young players that you can get invested in as a fan. So don't necessarily think that there's not going to be anything to watch. You're going to have some young players that you're going to have some fun watching and seeing how they develop.
Sure. I don't mean to say don't watch our show, don't follow the Falcons, don't support your team.
Please
of course,
watch our show. Subscribe to Prize Picks. Watch our show.
Yeah. Sign up for Prize Picks. That's another segue into our sponsor. You can use the promo code ASU to get a 100% match on your first deposit. And of course, subscribe to our channel on YouTube, subscribe to us on Facebook, give us a like, follow us on Twitter at TJ Pollen, at DM Holcomb. And
I love talking football on Twitter. So follow me on Twitter. I love it. Ask anything. I enjoy talking football on Twitter.
But my point just is that the Falcons aren't going to win a lot of games in 2022. No. And if you're only watching them for wins, you're gonna be frustrated. Which is why I don't understand why management doesn't just say we are rebuilding for 2023. And I guess they're so scared that they're not going to be able to sell tickets if they say we're not trying to win this year. But trying to win or saying that you're trying to win and then not winning is worse, in my opinion. So just they're taking their medicine. It's going to be a rough year in the win-loss columns, but there are brighter things ahead because of a lot of what Cindy pointed out, that the salary cap space, better quarterbacks available next year. So it's going to be a rough fall, but this team might not be down and out for very long. I think 2023 looks a lot more promising.
Yep, exactly.
Thanks for tuning in this Saturday. I don't think we're going to have, breaking, not that the Matt Ryan trade broke during our show, but we're not going to have as big of topics to discuss here in the next few weeks, but we're going to be breaking down the draft. So tune in every Saturday as we gear up for the Falcons picking 8th, at the end of April.
Exactly. There's still going to be plenty to talk about. The NFL's 24/7, 365. So that's what you get. Have a great week, everyone.